Hey there, film fiends. Welcome to Video Ferox, your weekly dive into shitty drive-in movies. We're in the middle of Roger Corman month, and today we're looking at a World War II flick that's got more stock footage than allowed by law. The Secret Invasion. So grab some popcorn, kick back, and see what the King of the Bees has for us.
1943. Somewhere in Nazi-occupied territory are 5 men, misfits from the 4 corners of the world, the strangest 5, with nothing in common but their incredible daring. Enlisted against their will in a monstrous crusade against the fascist fortress at Dubrovnik, are their extraordinary talents equal to the task of ripping out its secret? Now, their lives are linked, their movements timed to the minute, their actions triggered to the second, for they alone shared the secret. An impossible scheme. The war itself depended on the precise timing of 1 second. You will live as these men launch the Secret Invasion. Mace, the Mad Major, obsessed by the knowledge that he could not fail.
Abandoned? This mission will be abandoned only when all 6 of us are dead.
Roca, the master criminal, destined to be a hero. He lived only for the challenge of high adventure.
You lead your troops into battle against the Germans, or my friend here will kill you.
Scanlon, the demolition demon. He could blow the crystal off a watch, yet still keep it running. Bell, the forger. He could duplicate any signature and make it look better than the original.
I can reproduce this stuff in my sleep.
Durrell, the assassin. He didn't need a war to kill. With him, murder was an instinct. And Mila, the girl who gave her flesh and blood, more than her own life, to these heroes from hell. These men, an impossible feat against staggering odds. And no matter what the price, no matter what the punishment, they had to keep their secret. At a secret place, at a secret time, you will live as these men launch the Secret Invasion.
Okie dokie, kids. That was the trailer to The Secret Invasion from Roger Corman in 1964.
Also, a little bit of a departure from Corman because most of his earlier works were science fiction or horror. I don't think this is his first war movie, but I do think it's his first war movie that really got noticed.
If you go back far enough in his filmography, this is essentially a World War II remake of the Western he did, 5 Guns West. So, not exactly new territory, but brand new budget and brand new setting. So, new creature.
Mm-hmm.
Did you like the movie, Brad?
I did. I enjoyed it. I thought the characters were all rather engaging and interesting, and I totally loved the setting. I mean, the location shots was just like, wow.
This movie is mad entertaining. It's well-paced. I kind of like the World War II genre anyway. I kind of like your Guns and Avron and those sorts of movies. So this kind of right up my alley anyway, and it's well-made, well put together. I thought this was a damn good flick.
I had the pleasant surprise of going into this movie completely cold. I'd never heard of it. It was a complete unknown to me going in.
Well, hell, when I bought this disc ages and ages ago. I was going through and picking movies for this month, and I'm like, okay, well, let's see what Roger's done. And I'm going through the list, and I'm like, this, and I'm like, The Secret Invasion? Wait a minute, hold on, check the cover. Oh, that's a Roger Corman movie? What the fuck? So I owned it, I bought it because it was Roger, but it didn't even click to me that it was a Roger Corman movie. That's how obscure this damn thing is.
I think that actually works well to its benefit, because this isn't going to be something you're going to be digging up if you're a fan of the genre that Corman usually goes for.
Alrighty, so we love the fuck out of this. Let's just get on to the spoilers, and we'll get into why it's so damn good.
To serve man, it's a cookbook.
So the movie starts out quite literally with a bang, because we get the opening credits and Roger has a whole bunch of World War II stock footage or stock footage from another movie or something that he's running under the opening credits, and it's just combat stuff. Shot at night, kind of cool looking, and not necessarily really germane to the story, but it's kind of like, hey, it's got my attention right out of the gate.
I thought it was pretty effective, especially making all or most of the sequences be night scenes. It kind of fooled you into thinking it actually was coherent as opposed to being bits and bobs. But, it worked, and it was nicely interspersed with the opening credits, and just, I liked it. For something where you are on a budget, this was a fairly effective technique.
Well, clearly the Cairo sequences, right after the end credits end, we start introducing the characters, and they're interspersed with them arriving on trains and arriving on boats and stuff, and we get shots of Cairo in 1943. And the obvious difference between the stuff that Roger has shot and the stuff that Roger's procured from other sources, it's the film grain that's the tell.
I was sitting there looking at it going, wait a minute, those signs aren't Arabic.
Yes, the stock footage is pretty obvious and slightly egregious, but it really does help sell the setting of the movie. It really does sink your hooks into it and says, okay, yes, this feels like Cairo. It's a very effective move for a movie that doesn't have a lot of money.
One opening bit where the guy is on the plane and he's looking at the pyramids was particularly well done, because, it kind of felt like it was the opening sequence to a bombing run at that particular point. And I'm like, no, don't bomb those.
So we meet our intrepid team of convicts and ne'er-do-wells. And this movie is essentially The Dirty Dozen, but The Dirty Dozen about 6 years before The Dirty Dozen was actually made. Because that was like, I think, 65, 68, something like that. And so we've got folks like Henry Silva, and Henry plays this absolute just hard motherfucker. He is like an assassin that has no fucks to give.
And he is cool. He is quiet. He almost always has his shit together, and he never reveals anything about himself or about how he's feeling.
So Henry Silva, and I don't remember who was doing the digging also at the time, but Henry's keeping out guard. He's keeping an eye on the guard. And while he's watching, he's seeing these couple of Nazis come in from the left, and over here from the other side of the graveyard, he sees the waitress from the diner with the baby coming in from the other side. And he's like, oh shit, they're going to run into each other and blow the whole operation. So he grabs her and pulls her down and covers her mouth and don't speak. The Nazis are right here. And the Nazis are directly around the corner from them. And they're drinking a little booze and they're like having some, chit-chat Nazi time. And he's got the baby in order to keep the baby from crying, he covers the mouth. But being a stone cold killer and being a little more aggressive and assertive and a little more forthright than you would expect, he accidentally kills the baby. Whoops.
They go down into the crypt where, they can move around a lot more and make more noise. And he breaks down. He goes up against the wall and he starts sobbing.
And she's over in the corner with the corpse of her baby kind of clutching it, and she's freaking the fuck out. The rest of the team comes in and they're like, senses the pallor in the room. It's like, oh shit, what's going on here? And somebody says, yeah, you killed the baby. And they freak out at him because he, obviously stone cold killer, this was an intended attack. They're going to take it out on him. And she's like, no, it was an accident. So she's okay enough with it that she can defend him and keep him from dying, even though she's obviously distraught.
It's one of the few times where he's not stone face. He is genuinely distraught over having accidentally killed an infant. And, it's perfectly understandable. The other moments where he demonstrates emotions are also really critical moments. There's the one scene where he fakes committing suicide. That was one bit. There was another bit where the mom got killed in action, and he kind of breaks down a little bit for that.
So the studio, when Roger presented them the script, United Artists said, okay, we want to have traditional, upstanding, white hat heroes. And so I think Henry Silva killing the baby and him having this genuine emotional reaction to this instance when he should be just Stoneface and a traditional hero, I think this is a subversion of that studio note slightly. And it's a powerful moment. It really works, and it really defines that character, I thought.
Oh, it did. It did really well. And the fact that he kind of had a connection with that woman for a while, too. There's a moment where earlier on where they're driving through driving out of the town to get to the graveyard. He basically is doing the kind of peering at the bundle, trying to look at the baby's face, and she unwraps her the baby's head so he can take a look. And that is a great little moment.
Henry Silva is a surprisingly complex character for what is essentially a team of archetypes, essentially.
The fact that he is interacting with the other characters in an interesting manner, even though he's just this complete stone cold assassin, it's really quite interesting and makes him a lot less of a paper cutout of a character. Now, mind you, everybody in this movie is an archetype of some sort or another, but he is the noticeable, huge, glaring exception to being only a trope. He's more than that, and it made him a lot more entertaining to me.
His interactions with, between him and Mickey Rooney were actually, I thought, some of the really highlights of the script. The him coming out and it's like, so Mickey Rooney is digging through the graveyard and comes across a body because that's what you do in the graveyard because there's dead bodies in the ground. Imagine that. He freaks out, comes out, he's got his in the crypt, he's grabbing his breath and it's like, oh my God, it smells like death down there. And Henry Silva says, no, it smells like eternity down there. Fucking brilliant.
He's really entertaining. I mean, for one thing, he interacts with everybody, and he talks up a storm sometimes. He's drinking a lot, and even when he's not actually interacting with the other actors, he is interacting with the props. He's screwing around with things.
Well, there's this one scene where they finally hook up with the partisans in the country somewhere. And they're talking with the natives and they're figuring out, okay, well, the Nazis are here and they've taken over this town and there's probably X amount of men. And the commander's talking with the leader of the partisans. And Mickey Rooney is flirting with this waitress and just starts nibbling on her hand. And it's just this background event that, and eventually the conversation comes around to Mickey Rooney and he needs to input some stuff and he looks up from the what? And just kind of with a smile and the waitress kind of smiles and slinks off. And it's like, little clever bits like that. I really liked that touch.
This actually turned into a little bit of a Chekhov's gun because later on, when they're infiltrating the Nazi-held Croat city, they have to infiltrate in bits and bobs so that they don't come in all as a big obvious group. And the waitress is basically manhandling isn't really the right word. She's woman-handling him in through the gates and pretending to be his argumentative wife.
And he, of course, is drunk off his ass, and the Nazis are like, man, just get the fuck out of here. You're not my problem. You're somebody else's problem. Go away.
I loved that sequence, especially since once he's in through the door, he's like immediately sober once again.
And so we've got this team of like the misfits and ne'er-do-wells, and we've got the fixer who can get you anything from anywhere for any price, that sort of thing.
There's the disguise master, the actor.
Yeah, the master of disguise, who basically, when he has to pretend to be the commandant of the Nazis, basically they got the Nazi actor just dub his voice over the guy. It's that sort of thing. Fine, whatever, go with it.
And then there's the squad commander.
Yeah, basically he's the RAF commander who is the actual legitimate guy. He's got a skin in this game. And he's like, oh God, I'm stuck with the task of having to herd these goddamn cats. Fine, whatever.
The interaction between the commander, the RAF commander, and the squad commander is really interesting because it's obvious that they don't like each other, but they're going to do their job and they're going to be professionals about it. I mean, the squad commander, he wants to get his sentence reduced or canceled or whatever the arrangement is, and so he's willing to go along and just do the job, but his professionalism manages to impress the RAF commander, which is kind of neat. I mean, the fact that they actually took the time to convey that the two guys just, under any other circumstances, no, they would be cats and dogs. They would be arguing all the time. But no, they're both being professionals about it, and they both want to get the job done. And it's cool seeing that they're getting over their difficulties with each other to do the job. And I'm like, yes, they didn't drag it down into constant bickering the way more modern films would have done.
And so the next thing we know, we're on this Irish fishing boat, this little small thing. And it's the middle of the night, and they're in the middle of the Adriatic Sea, and it's dark, and they're like planning okay, what's the next move?
You gotta get yourself onto the mainland, find this general. He's held prisoner by the Nazis. He was a Yugoslav partisan, and the Nazis have basically bullied him into handing over his army to them. And they want to liberate him so that he can go and take command of the Yugoslav partisans and then use the Yugoslav army to distract the Nazis and the Italians so that when Normandy happens, the axis will be drawn to the wrong front.
So they get over to Yugoslavia, and this is where we get to one of the big strengths of the movie. This thing is fucking gorgeous. We get large sweeping vistas of the sea, we get old beautiful castles, we get this old Yugoslavian town, and Roger takes the studio money and goes to location and uses this landscape to great effect.
Sometimes it reminds me of Greece, and sometimes it reminds me of southern Italy. And finding out that it was in what was then called Yugoslavia is, it's kind of the same part of the world. But, I mean, it was kind of neat because it's someplace that's different than most of the movies we see as American are filmed in Italy or filmed in Greece because that's where the filmmakers either are from or where they like to go to. Greece also has really cheap taxes, so, I can see the draw of filming there.
The budget for the movie was just slightly over $500,000, which for a studio project is absolute peanuts. For a Roger Corman movie, that's fucking gold. So he has more money than there was to do with. So going there to stretch the dollar even a little further to put all pennies on the screen, that makes sense.
My favorite location is the crypt. They basically have used their maps to find this subterranean river, which used to be a sewer, but it hasn't been used for many years. And they have to get to it and use that as an access point to pop up close to where the prison is. But the downside to it is the Nazi fortress is sitting right on top of the primary access archway to get into this old sewer. So they have to figure out a way of getting in there without being seen. So they basically move themselves into a graveyard and take over one of the crypts and dig up the floor. And it's a really well done sequence. I liked that bit, and I really liked the crypt.
And after they get into the crypt and they start building the tunnel, and they start about halfway through the tunnel, they've only got like 3 days to get this done before the mission is, well, no good, because after the expiration date. So they're digging and they're digging and they're digging, but then the Nazis find out where they're at. And so there's the brief stand-up for just a moment while they're in the crypt saying, well, what the fuck do we do now? The spotlights are on them. They're like, you know, come out, you know, Englishmen, we're going to kill you if we don't, you know, but come out and we'll treat you fairly. And they're like, well, we wanted to get into the prison. Let's get into the prison. And so they use this to get into the prison as opposed to having the tunnel the way onto the wall. And this is where the movie slows down a little bit. It had been moving along pretty briskly up to this point, but now they're in a cell and there's a lot of back and forth between them and the commandant's trying to break them. And let's find out what you know. And he starts trying to play one guy off the other. But then they're coming up with their counter plans of okay, how are we going to get out of here? Can you get this lock? Oh, I can get this lock in my sleep. Okay, let's find the listening device so we can't be eavesdropped on, that sort of thing. So it's a lot of cat and mouse. It's a lot of slower cat and mouse. So it's still gripping stuff, but it's slower than what the movie had been to up to this point.
It was kind of interesting seeing the various little steps that they each had to do in order to get out. Everybody on the team was vital. They couldn't have done it without every guy pulling his weight.
And this kicks off our big action beat at the very end of the movie, where Roger and his cast of thousands, I mean quite literally, there's a whole bunch of Nazis, and I mean we see this large platoon going off into the distance down the road, and then as they're fighting the way up the hill, chasing after R5, then the partisans show up, and there's just on the ridge, this dozens and dozens of dudes. So there's like a couple hundred dudes in this shot. And it was like, wow, that's where the $6 million went.
Really all you're seeing is two groups of guys with guns running at each other. There's not an actual lot of fighting that you see them do. You know, there's a couple moments where people stand and take a shot or, punch at somebody else, but that's about it.
This is where everybody starts dying. Poor old Ed Kooky Burns, he's the first one to go, because they just get on the other side of the bridge, and he takes a bullet in like the leg or the arm and can't go on. It's like, no, you guys go on without me, I'll hold them here. And so he gets up with a machine gun and holds off the troops as they flee into the hills.
The squad commander gets shot in the leg fairly late on in the battle, and he basically makes a sacrifice move.
And it's kind of a sad, poignant death. I mean, he wasn't a very well-developed character, sure. None of them were. But him kind of slumped over at the base of this tree in this kind of picturesque scene with the Nazis in the background. You hear the dogs barking in the background. And he just kind of sits there and slumps and then just kind of tips over when the Nazis come up. It actually was really kind of effective and made me feel bad for the dude that has zero character development.
It worked. They did it right. It's kind of hard to describe, but they did it right.
And then we get to the ending of the movie. And this is the point. I looked down at the clock on the DVD. And I was like, well, wait a second. We've got like another 10 minutes to go. And like, we're at the end of the movie. What the hell's going on? Because it's not over. It's a twist ending where they have done all this work and they sacrificed so much and they've gotten the general and they've gotten the general back to the partisans. And he says, here's your guy. Let's rally the troops. And the partisans go, who the fuck is that? They grabbed the wrong dude from the castle. And now they're like, oh shit, what do we do? And the dude, he's, like, oh, well, you got the wrong guy, man. And Henry Silva's like, I'm going to kill you. And he's like, no, you can't kill me, because if you kill me, then all of a sudden the blame for the assassination is going to be on you, and my partisans are going to be rallied to the Nazis, and you will lose. And Henry Silva's like, oh yeah, whips off the robes that he's been wearing at this time and says, Sieg Heil for the fatherland, and guns the dude down in front of all of these partisans, and all these partisans say, oh shit, fuck the Nazis, and gun Henry Silva down, and then off to the castle they go. It is so fucking badass.
The one sole guy who survived, he basically is watching all of this kind of in awe.
After the partisans go and they storm the castle, and there's this long shot of him in this kind of alley courtyard thing, and he's surrounded by the dead bodies, and he's just kind of looking, and he's looking at his gun, and just sees the futility of war and the whole pointlessness of what they've just done, even though they've done a good thing. And he just kind of throws down his gun and walks off into the sunset, basically. Roll end credits. It is such a great ending.
I'm reminded of the song 110 Soldier, where at the end of the song there's one soldier left, period. Everyone else in that song died. And he gets on his horse and rides away. And this is like that. He is the 110 Soldier in the song. And it's just like, wow. Just great.
So the characters are paper thin, sure, but the acting all around is pretty solid. I mean, we've gone on extensively about Henry Silva and Mickey Rooney, sure, but the rest of the team is actually pretty good too.
There's nobody that's a weak performer in this. Okay, there's a really large number of background people who we don't really get to see act, but they do their parts, convincingly.
So that's essentially what we think of the Secret Invasion. So, Brad, you got a final thought for me there, man?
It's a great little gem. I mean, when you can be digging and you're like, oh, hey, a diamond. Great.
We'll be here all night. Try the veal. And we'll catch you next week.
And that's a wrap on The Secret Invasion. Join us next week as Ian and Tony check out another classic from The King of the Bees, The Intruder, starring William Shatner. This one's a bit of a departure from our usual fare, so brace yourselves for some serious social commentary. Until then, stay evil, film fiends.
Oh, lad, you don't say much, but when you say something, the things you say aren't very funny.